Joining us in studio, Kalni House, MKMVA NEC member, Tsepo Khadima, political analyst, and Thabo Mutle, ANC Youth League NEC member on the phone, and Zanele Lwana, Black First Land First Deputy President, and Silo Peterson, ANC Youth League Free State spokesperson. And good evening to all of our guests, and thanks so much for joining us. I mean, just at face value, when you look at the tremendous support that Cyril Ramaphosa enjoys from big business, that they've left their ivory towers to go to Soweto and so throughout the talk. What does it say to you, Zanele?
It's public knowledge, and I think South Africans are very clear that Cyril Ramaphosa is the presidential candidate for white settler monopoly capital in this country, is the preferred candidate to stop any moves that are being made to advance the agenda of radical economic transformation in the country. Cyril Ramaphosa has in so many times been endorsed by huge corporations, by businesses, by racist organizations such as AfriForum. Cyril Ramaphosa has been acting so many times outside the mandate of radical economic transformation in this country. So it's not a surprise, but it should be a big warning to the public to say, why is this person supported by those who seek to maintain the oppression of the black majority in this country, who do not want to see this country going forward? And one of the key reasons Ramaphosa is being supported is because he's a businessman trusted by multi-corporations, led by white people such as Johan Rupert, Stephen Kosef, Andrews as well, that have given him shares to make wealth, and while the majority of the country still remains at the margins of the economy in this country, it does not even
so you're saying are you saying that he's far removed, he's distant from the plight of the majority based on the wealth that he's amassed and the kind of company that he keeps?
Yes, it's also very important to look into detail to the revelations of the Paradise Papers, which has shown how multi-corporations and white monopoly capital and senior public politicians in this country, including Cyril Ramaphosa, are quite at the center of the illicit financial outflows out of the country. It is reported that at least 60 billion rand leaves the country and goes to tax havens. Paradise Papers also reported that from the period of like 2004 until 2013, a total of about $209 billion has left the country. This shows how Ramaphosa is the candidacy of white monopoly capital, and how that money that leaves the country under the leadership of Ramaphosa as the deputy president of the country could be used to solve immediate problems such as free education.
But then it's also not new in any political party to gain support from business. ANC is no exception to that. You need to fundraise and you do your business forums, etc. What is wrong with having business prefer Cyril Ramaphosa over any other candidate?
Cindy, of course, the ANC has to engage with the business community, but it depends on how you do that. And if you come forward as the preferred candidate of the vanguard of white monopoly capital, because it was really the vanguard of white monopoly capital that sat there in Orlando yesterday. And those people are not the friends of the majority of South Africans, and especially not the friends of Africans. Now, Cyril Ramaphosa says he's coming with a new deal. The new deal that he seems to be presenting to us is no longer a clear policy of radical economic transformation. It is a policy of inclusive growth. And inclusive growth does not mean that you're going to challenge the strong developmental problems that we are faced with in South Africa. And that is why Stephen Kosef loves Cyril Ramaphosa, but does not relate to radical economic transformation. You referred to what happened at our National Policy Conference, where Mr. Kosef stood up and arrogantly said, I don't care if you talk about radical economic transformation, but just don't do anything. Our impression is that Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa has been captured by these white monopoly capitalists, that they seem to be doing the bidding for him and he seems to be doing the bidding for them. And the question that we need to ask is, to what extent are they funding this campaign, and the funds that they put into the campaign of Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa, how does that relate to the policies that will in future determine South Africa? And I can assure you...
Is this not a pragmatic view that business would apply generally? This is the concern around the economy, the stability and policy certainty. That the fact that there's issues around jobs and inequality not being addressed, that what you call vanguard business or white monopoly capital supporting Cyril Ramaphosa in the long run could benefit the greater South Africa. It's for the greater good as opposed to going the radical route.
Of course we need to engage with business, and Comrade Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma engages with business, but it depends on the terms through which you engage with business. If you engage with business on the basis that you actually accept the current status quo, that you are working towards a continuation of this strange policy of inclusive growth, and you do not challenge the fundamental transformation that needs to happen in South Africa, then we have a problem. By all means, engage with business. By all means, make sure that business will become part of the radical economic transformation agenda. But make sure that radical economic transformation, when you use the words, will indeed mean the transformation of the power relations in the organizations and the management of the economy of this country to the point where the majority of black people and especially Africans will be in control and will benefit from this economy. I do not hear those words from Comrade Cyril, but I hear those words day after day from Comrade Nkosazana Dlamini.
Mr. Niehaus, just in a bit, Khadima, are you also of the view that should Cyril Ramaphosa succeed President Jacob Zuma, that essentially the status quo will be perpetuated, where we don't really see a material change in the control, management and ownership of the economy?
Well, there are two things. Should Mr. Ramaphosa win the presidency of the ANC in December, it will tell us one thing, and one thing only, that ANC ideology and ANC politics is dead. And it will also tell us that Soweto, which is famed for the 1976 uprising, where black children wanted more than just free education, but wanted education that could emancipate them and wanted education that could address the very same challenges we are dealing with now of inequality, unemployment, and poverty, that also will be down the drain. The three men that attended the rally last night that was delivered by Mr. Ramaphosa in Soweto in the form of Stephen Kosef, Johan Berger, as well as Colin Coleman. Those are the people that will be in charge should Mr. Ramaphosa be in. He will be a figurehead and they will be in charge, and I can tell you that from experience in terms of how much power they already wield on him and on everything else that he has been standing for. So I think for the members of the African National Congress and for the country as a whole, if he prevails, it will then tell you that indeed this is the direction, this is the move that is on. But what has surprised me, in fact astonished, is the fact that Stephen Kosef said no word whatsoever about the Paradise Papers, where his own company is implicated in the $200 billion that have left the shores of South Africa, not Africa, of South Africa. Mr. Ramaphosa himself made no mention whatsoever. He has, for whatever reason, been muted in saying one word, that the companies that he's presided over, that in fact has helped him to amass the wealth that he has, are the ones that have been involved, implicated in the $200 billion. That is, at today's rate, you are looking at trillions of rand, effectively our more or less 50% of our GDP that has been lost by those companies. And the mere fact that they can be so emboldened to even go to Soweto and say, here we are, this is our men that we, at the end of the day, are backing up. They are just now showing that they are in charge and that is the power that they have. But if he prevails at the December conference, then we would know that the ideology of the ANC is dead, because we should not be surprised that he comes up with a new deal as though that now we are at the time of Franklin Delano Roosevelt or even Ronald Reagan. We are not at those times. Here he is part of a movement, an organization with a 105-year history, and the 105-year history has always been premised on nothing other than emancipation of the majority of the people of this land that are black, who have been dispossessed as early as 1652, intensified in 1862.
All right, let's get a view if ANC Youth League Free State spokesperson shares your sentiments. Sello Peterson, good evening to you and thanks for your patience. Can you concur or disagree with Tsepo that the ANC policies and essentially the party would be dead should CR take the reins in December?
Well, look, thanks very much for having us as the Youth League in the Free State. I think that it's important to contextualize the discussion to say the African National Congress, like the Youth League, and I think that's why our support remains a principal support for Comrade Nkosazana, because we think that we have defined ourselves to say that we have a generational mission, which is economic freedom in our lifetime. And we have said clearly that that program must be underpinned and buttressed by a radical socio-economic transformation agenda, which has been clarified by the National Policy Conference of the ANC, that we are basically dealing with the structure and the ownership patterns of the economy, such that our own people and young people in particular are at the center of being the beneficiaries. Now, the question then which we must ask, because we heard even yesterday, but we're not surprised that the NN will always try to reinvent him or herself in the picture of those who are progressive. That is why all of a sudden, when Rupert and other people were saying radical economic transformation is a code name for stealing, we did not hear Comrade Ramaphosa say anything about that, because it was in reference to Comrade Nkosazana and broader membership of the ANC, which has actually said that RT becomes the policy of the ANC. But we're saying, as the Youth League, we're not surprised that you would have all of these, the captains of white monopoly capital who have presided over super exploitation of our people, who have presided over heinous crimes economically in this particular country, where we know that even collusion and every other economic crime in this particular country are the very same people who yesterday were seated with Comrade Ramaphosa. All of a sudden, he speaks about the New Deal. In whose class interest is that particular the so-called radical economic transformation is talking about? Because you see, you can talk about radical economic transformation as a mantra, but one thing is that you click. The ANC is clear in terms of the National Policy Conference, because is clear in terms of unpacking of what it means and in whose class interest. So we're not surprised, but we think that one thing that we appreciate is that the enemy is beginning to show face, the enemy is beginning to come clearly now to say this is what we are. And maybe just to respond to your question, we are not worried about Comrade Cyril becoming president of the ANC, because it's not going to happen. Membership of the ANC remains the branches, those are the centers of the revolution, and as the Youth League we was very comfortable in the future is bright. We are not going to really waste our time with people who their program is underpinned and buttressed by those who presided over serious economic crimes.
Yeah, Mr. Peterson, just hold on the line. Thabo Motle, ANC Youth League NEC member, joins us. Again, thanks for your patience as well. Good evening to you. Are you also of the view that the best thing now, or the only option, is Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, notwithstanding what we've seen from the banks in their policy, or rather their so-called surveys or polls, that Cyril Ramaphosa is the only hope for this country? Mr. Motle? All right, Mr. Niehaus, maybe you can take that. We've seen those kind of surveys or political economics studies, if you will, that portray Cyril Ramaphosa as the one person who will drive South Africa in the right course and ensure that we remain stable and we grow, etc., in your view?
Well, Cindy, when Standard Bank tells us that Cyril Ramaphosa is the answer and tells us that radical economic transformation, and specifically also free education and quality education for our young people, will lead to fiscal slide. When they tell us all of that, then surely we know that Mr. Ramaphosa is on the wrong road, and we know that Comrade Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma is on the right road. Standard Bank, with its terrible history, with its history of collusion, with its history of oppressing the people of this country, and being a central part of the whole white monopoly capital edifice that we have to challenge and break down. When they say that someone is good, we know that person is not going to be good for the future of South Africa. But let me just say something more. Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa has a big challenge ahead of himself. He has to address what has happened and what has been clearly set out in the Paradise documents. Interestingly enough, he's not doing it. He's keeping quiet about it. Shanduka is implicated in tax evasion. So is Investec. Strangely enough, but perhaps not so strange. Stephen Kosev of Investec was yesterday evening sitting in the front row, cheering along his friend Cyril Ramaphosa. They seem to make friends. They seem to take hands, not just in terms of the kind of economic policies that they want to bring to South Africa, but also in terms of tax evasion. And at this moment, we are in a centrally critical situation. We need to have the money for free education for our young people so that they can be empowered. Let me just conclude.
Very briefly,
it's very
please.
important. The money that had been taken out of this country illicitly through tax evasion can pay for free education. Comrade Ramaphosa is the Deputy President of South Africa and of the ANC. What does he say about it? What is he doing to prevent that situation and to correct what went wrong?
Correct. All right, let's look at the new deal, supposedly, that will be struck in the best interests of every citizen and those that reside in South Africa. What shape, size or contour, what do you, in your mind, think the president or deputy president may be referring to?
As I have said that, and we are all in agreement that Cyril Ramaphosa, who is the deputy president of this country, is hugely supported by the ruling class of this country and hence white monopoly capital. And we know historically, we have seen this in Brazil, we have seen this in Venezuela, how the most corrupt, such as Cyril Ramaphosa, for tax evasion and so many other things, are presented as the crusaders of anti-corruption, while they want to maintain a status quo that continues to take away from the people. MTN is implicated when Ramaphosa was the leader there. Shanduka is implicated. Investec, his friend, is implicated. Lomnin, that he made sure that people were massacred in Marikana to save the profits are all implicated. So it's going to be a disaster if we are going to have Cyril Ramaphosa, who is clearly supported by businesses that do not want radical economic transformation. Johan Rupert, who calls it theft, because what we should be clear now is that the real theft is that of Johan Rupert, is that of the Oppenheimer family, is that of white monopoly capital. And what radical economic transformation seeks to justify
is he abandoning the radical
economic?
Is he abandoning the policy of the ANC, in your view, Mr. Khadima, by not necessarily pronouncing so explicitly on RET?
No, I've made this point over many times, and I will continue to sustain it, for it is factual, that Mr. Ramaphosa is an outsider who has just been around for a little bit longer. In terms of ANC ideology, ANC politics, he's an outsider. We should not be surprised or astonished that he has not been able to articulate the policies of the African National Congress and how he will be implementing those should he be elected the president. He's not able to articulate those. And then he comes up with hyperboles. For example, he says that the economy will grow by 3% in 2018. That equates to adding to the current GDP size of this country 128 billion rand. Now the question becomes, that 128 billion rand additional, what will it be made out of? He didn't give us any details, and we're interested in that because effectively he was promising people effectively I don't know what it is, a worthless promise, because it is not possible unless you give us the mechanics of 3% GDP growth. But he's been talking not on ANC policy. Don't be surprised. He's an outsider who's been around a little bit long.
All right, and I must hasten to say this disclaimer that the views of our panelists, or our callers for that matter, are not the views of the African News Network. But thanks indeed.
I'm
we
independent.
appreciate it. And you're independent. So am I. So thank you very much for our panelists and for you at home for watching. Carl Niehaus, MKMVA NEC member, Tsepo Khadima, political analyst, Thabo Mutle, ANC NEC member, who we couldn't join, Asanele Lwane, Black First, the Land First Deputy President. President, and Silo Peterson, ANC Youth League Free State spokesperson. We take a break. Do stay with us. ANC decides just after this with Mfundo Mabalana.